Welcome to Rappler Talk. I am Ralph Rivas. Now, businesses will slowly start reopening as the government eases lockdown restrictions. The so-called modified enhanced community quarantine is enforced from May 16, that's today, until 31. For the full list of cities and provinces under this scheme, please do visit our site, rappler.com. Now, the modified ECQ basically means essential industries like healthcare, pharmacies, vet clinics, food manufacturing, supply chains, and groceries can operate at full capacity. Meanwhile, certain manufacturing and processing plants can operate at 50% capacity. More commercial establishments can also operate at 50% capacity, like malls. But what about the safety of employees? Now, to talk about that, we have with us Procter Gamble HR country leader Vince Dizon. Thanks so much for joining us, Vince. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Nice to be here as well.
So let's just dive right into it. Tell us a little about P&G, what you guys have been doing during the lockdown, how many employees are working, have worked during the ECQ, and how many are expected to return to work starting today or in the next days?
All right. Thank you very much, Ralph. So first and foremost, you Procter Gamble in the Philippines, you have about 2,000 employees. This is spread across our plant and our main office, which is located in BGC. Primarily for the main office, most of those people have been, in fact, all of those people have been on work from home since the very beginning of this ECQ. As for our plant, given that our plant, many of our products are actually classified as essential products, we've been following the government guidelines on having a skeletal workforce to deliver those essential products, which is about 50% of our plant operations, where we have about 600 people, no more than 300 people would have been working during this period. Now, also, given that we have two sets of employees, for our plant, the people who are working, we've been practicing the highest standards when it comes to social distancing, disinfection, and medical tracking protocols. These are practices that we've had all across the world. We're learning from many of our plants and factories in other countries and trying to reapply what works best for us here in the Philippines to keep our employees safe all the time.
Okay, so Vince, walk us through. Like, think of me as a factory employee. Papasok ako ng work. So, anong bubungad sa akin? What's the very first step?
Fantastic. Good question. So we practice this kind of safety mindset end to end. When I say end to end, from the moment we pick up the person from their house until the time they get back to their place, we're actually practicing safety. So employees are actually shuttled to and from their house to the office. That's one thing that we wanted to do to minimize any potential risk of contamination in between there. Right. So from the time that they're picked up in a shuttle that actually is also the same shuttle that brings them back home. In the shuttle, we practice the same, social distancing. So the government requires that about 50% of the capacity of the shuttle is used, not more than that. So we do that. So they're required to function 50% capacity. Everyone inside the shuttle is the right PPEs. So we do distribute masks to our employees to ensure that they're safe all the time, following government guidelines. And then when they get to the plant, we do have temperature checks. So we do the temperature check. If there's anything that should be a source of alarm, if there's a temperature, that person is immediately asked to go home. Now, mind you, that's only a secondary layer of protection because our guidance to employees is that if they do have a temperature, if they do have a fever, they don't even come into the shuttle. They tell us in advance, they call us. It's in fact part of our plant safety protocols. Now, assuming the person has gotten into the site, right? So they've gone through the temperature check, they've gotten into their shift. Every day in our shift, we have this process called DDS, which is our daily drumbeat and system to ensure that we have the regular operations for the day running. Each of our shift leaders, apart from talking about what is required during the shift from a business standpoint, they also have a conversation on regular safety, reminding them of all of the required protocols during an ECQ period. For example, making sure that you can safe distance with people. For example, reminding people on protocols when going in common areas, whether that be the cafeteria, the locker rooms, the washroom, reminding people on timelines in between shifts. So for example, if a person wants to take a break, there's actually a designated time zone for an employee to take a break, right? So this happens all throughout, every day's operation. We have that daily checkpoint in the morning. We treat safety in an ECQ period on medical and social distancing just the same as we treat safety in a workshop in the line, right? So we treat them the same. The importance is equal. So that starts at the beginning of the day. Then they go through the day, regular operation following those protocols, and we shuttle them back home, right? So end to end, safety becomes a priority for us.
So in the modified ECQ, I think your industry is allowed 100%, correct? Operations. Yeah. So how do you do that? I mean, if it's 100% capacity, you want physical distancing. So paano yun? Can you share kung paano, anong strategy niyo this time?
Thank you for asking. That's a very good question. So on that one, we're in fact still evaluating right now, right? The gradual return back, right? While we are allowed to produce all of our products, or at least most of our products are now allowed given the modified ECQ. Still, we're still assessing what is the extent that we can keep the good social distance. Right now, what we're targeting is between 1 to 2 meters. In fact, as you think about our plant, we've even put markers on the floor where people should be standing while they're in the workshop and all that, right? So we need to balance that. We need to meet those social distancing requirements, while at the same time, we need to produce our products. So we're evaluating that right now. As we go through the next couple of weeks, we're going to learn, right? It's a careful process for us, given that, again, employee safety is number one for us in the company.
So any particular things that you bought, the company has bought, any particular equipment bukod doon sa, you mentioned thermal checks. Kasi I noticed some companies, hotel setting naman ito, no? Parang meron silang dividers, no-touch faucets na, UV lights. So is P&G doing the same? And do you think these measures will be effective?
Well, first, no. We haven't bought some of those high-tech stuff like UV lights and all of that. We do believe that our current apparatus are good enough for this situation. So, for example, we do have the traditional thermal checks in the plant, right? We are in the process of ensuring that the social distancing education is strong, right? So that for me is a big piece of this whole process, right? More than putting in UV lights, we ensure that we disinfect regularly, right? In fact, our regular disinfection is up to 3 times a day for the entire plant, right? And up to 2 hours for every common area, every 2 hours, right? So we want to do a combination of good process where people are aware of the protocols that they need to follow while in the plant. Good facility where you have all of the strong disinfection, facilities management in place, and good education. So good education meaning to say that people need to understand the risks behind the COVID situation. So we educate people regularly. We tell them, what are the right things that they need to avoid? What do they need to consult medical staff on? How do they need to inform us regularly, right? And ensuring that they are able to tell us in advance. So we believe that these three together with the engagement of leadership is what helps us in our plan operate very safely.
So, ikaw ba personally, anong mga napansin mong changes since I haven't been to your plants now, but I just have a visual. I mean, I have certain visuals from other media outlets, no, and other plants. But yung napansin ko kasi, plants generally medyo magkakasiksik yan, and people have no choice but to interact because it's a whole chain. So papaano ba yun? Can you help us imagine what happens inside inside a P&G plant?
Okay, yes. So, well, I think the first thing that you'd see that's different is obviously upon entry of the plant, there is a zone where we check the temperature. That part you're going to see immediately. You will see that we also have isolation rooms ready, right, in case there's anyone who comes up with a temperature during that period. So that's the first piece. The second piece that you'll notice is we're very stringent in the common work areas or the common spaces. For example, the locker rooms, right? In our plant, everyone is required to wear a uniform, right? So when they change into their uniform, there's a locker room area for them to change. We're very strict on the social distancing within the locker room. So if in the past, when the shift starts, then all the shift's employees are already in the same locker room and changing at the same time. Right now, we're actually counting the number of heads that would enter to maintain the minimum of 1 to 2 meters social. That's one piece that you'd see that's very different. The second piece that's very different is when you get into the workshop. If before you could freely walk around, right? This is where the converters are and the machines are. What you'll notice now is that there is a designated place for you to actually stand, right? So we've actually marked those on the floor. And we don't allow people to walk around that freely anymore. And again, they understand. Obviously, they understand given the situation, right? A third thing that you'll different is the times that people would take breaks are also scheduled, right? Scheduled. You have to understand that in our plant we have our employees, but then at the same time there are also third parties that are located nearby, right? So we want that we're controlling the flow of people within the site. So that part we control. The fourth piece that you'll notice is when lunchtime comes, or then it's time for you to go to lunch, right? And then you go to the cafeteria. So the lunch break is scheduled, right? So we schedule it between our employees to ensure that they're not crowding at the same time. And we're also, in fact, we've rearranged the way the seats are in the cafeteria. It's very different now versus what you experience in the normal cafeteria, where you have long tables, people facing each other and all that. That's a normal day, right? Now in our cafeteria, it's one person per table, and they're only facing one direction. Right? So there's nobody facing them. All the seats are it's like a classroom when you get to our cafeteria. So that's our way of ensuring that the prevention is there, right? And all along our plan, right, in areas where people would tend to congregate in the past, you will see markers on the floor that indicate where one should stand. It's very much like what you'd see in buildings today. Many buildings today, you'll notice in the elevator, they've placed markers for where people would stand in the elevator. So we're the same across the floor. So so there are many things we're doing, Ralph, just to make sure that we keep a safe distance of 1 to 2 meters from all employees at all times.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that you're scheduling shifts, lunch breaks. Everything is scheduled differently now. But I want to know if that will affect output. Because I think that's another concern of companies, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, for now, I think it's been working for us. We've been working on it for the last few weeks already, right? We've been delivering and shipping our products. So output is there, right? In fact, my belief is, we have a strong system in our plan. We call it IWS, Integrated Work Systems. All right. The philosophy here is that you have very little waste in the work processes. That's part of the philosophy. For as long as we're able to keep operating this way with high efficiency, zero waste, I believe we can do it, right? In fact, if any, with scheduled breaks, one could argue that there's even less waste, right? Because then you're predicting when the breaks are happening, right? But it's, of course, I guess where it's going to be different for people would be the feeling of call it a freedom, right? Of taking a break when you want during the day. Now it's more scheduled.
So I want to talk about that as well, since I think everybody's stressed right now na nasa bahay lahat. And, how do you foster camaraderie in that kind of setting where movements are restricted, shifts are scheduled strictly? So how do you foster that? Kasi mental health is also an issue, and everybody, a lot of friends hindi na nagkikita-kita because of this pandemic. So what's your strategy as HR?
This is a passion topic of mine. So you'll hear, and you would have heard in many, write-ups on P&G, that we always say that P&G people are our most important assets, right? Our employees are essentially the company, right? That's what's kept the company going for 180 plus years. Now, when I think about it, that translated in the context of, we actually have a program now which we call Alaga, or Alagang P&G, right? Because we believe that caring for our employees now is the most important thing for us. You care for the employees, they'll care for the company, right? And we try to operationalize this Alaga in two ways, right? So of course, there are two types of employees. There are those who are in the plants, and there are those who are working from home. In the plants part of it, I talked already, right? Which is making sure that they feel safe all the time, right? That they recognize that we're doing everything in our power to keep them safe, right? In fact, even beyond going and making sure that they're safe, right? We want to make sure that they feel engaged, right? So even, whether up close or even from afar, our leaders are constantly engaging our employees in the plant, whether it's through WebEx calls or face-to-face videos. We try to keep them as engaged as possible. And in the process of doing so, we also try to help these. So in fact, I've heard that, one of the recent upcoming guidelines is ensuring that employees have vitamins, as an example. We've been doing this since the beginning, right? So we've actually been giving vitamins to our folks at the plant to keep them healthy since the very beginning. That's for the plant, right? And of course, there's many more things that we do there. For our employees who are working from home, this is a little bit tricky, right? So the good part is this. From the get-go of the ECQ, we've been ready for work from home. In fact, what some people may not know is that P&G has actually been working from home since 2002. We've been doing this to close to 2 decades. In fact, part of our regular operation is about 20% of our employees on a day-to-day basis would be working from home. We allow this kind of flexibility working arrangements. Now, it's different when you're working 20% of the time at home versus working 100% of the time at home, right? So obviously, I can imagine how it can be difficult, right? Being distanced from others, not being able to interact regularly. So to this effect, we have a lot of tools, right? So first is on digital tools. We're fully digital, right? Right now, we're using Zoom. Zoom got popular during this ECQ. But well before the ECQ, P&G's been using tools like WebEx, MS Teams, as a way for us to be virtually connected all the time, anytime. And that's been part of our DNA because we're a global company. We have to, right? So the tools are there, right? But beyond the tools, I think the second part has been keeping the culture and engagement alive, right? Now, this part is more art rather than science. How to ensure that we're regularly connected with our people. And this has been through very frequent town halls virtually with our people, a very regular engagement by our top management with all of our employees. And we do this almost on a weekly basis. And these are more about how to keep the work going, right? Keep things going. But the other part is this, right? The hardest thing about working from home is the mental, social, and emotional kind of, disconnection that one would have. And we recognize that. In our office prior to ECQ, we actually had a regular vibrant living program, right? That allowed people to stay healthy, either mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, right? And what we've done since we've had that, and since now we're working from home so efficiently, we know how to work from home, we've gone the next step, which is this entire program, our vibrant living program, under the banner of Alaga, has gone virtual. So we actually have a virtual vibrant living program. And just to kind of paint a picture for you, over the last 4 to 6 weeks, we've had regular physical fitness activities virtually, ranging from HIIT to yoga, right? We've even had, for example, during the Lenten season, during Easter, we had a virtual Lenten recollection for our employees. Obviously, all of this is voluntary, right? But we want people to feel that even if we're stuck at home, that you can live your life normally. Your work-life effectiveness continues to be as it were before the ECQ. So these are a few of the things that we're doing during this ECQ period for people to feel that life continues, right? And some people say that we can try to get as close to normal as we can during this period.
So what about you mentioned earlier that your even before the lockdown, P&G has been doing the work from home arrangement 20%, right? So far, do you see that increasing to I don't know, 50, 60% in the quote unquote new normal?
Yes. So I guess this is the moving forward, right? The way I see the moving forward piece, and people call it a new normal, right? I think let's call it what it is, right? In a new normal, it will be different for people. right? I think it's what most companies are expecting. It's going to be a little bit different, and there will be some sacrifices. And I recognize that. We recognize that in P&G. But what we're also trying is that we want to make this new normal a better normal for our people. It won't be the same as every day, but it'll be better than what they're fearing, right? So obviously on the work from home standpoint, yes, we are looking to increase it. We're actually in the process right now of reviewing our work from home policies. If in the past you would say once a week with alignment with your manager, right? Moving forward, given the requirements of social distancing, and of course just being very prudent about safety, we are certainly looking at increasing this, right? To how many days, we're still working on that. But the time is proven that we actually do have the ability to work from home 5 days a week, right? We've proven this over this last 6 weeks. So if it has to go that direction, we're ready. We're not saying that we will yet, but we are ready. Outside of this, we're of course looking at many other things. For example, in this better normal, how do you continue to operate very effectively? How do you ensure that we can continue to hire, right? Grow our organization. Fun fact, during this ECQ period, most companies may have kind of slowed down on hiring. We've kept our pace the same. We've hired 55 people during this period, and we've offered 78 others. So we continue to do that. As we move forward,
let me cut you right there. So paano yun? I'm interested in that kasi a lot of people are looking for work. Some have suspended their recruitment processes. So how did you guys do that? The recruitment process during the lockdown?
The good question. Thank you very much. So the good part for us is, and again, maybe this is a testimony to some of our digital capabilities. We've actually started virtual interviews for quite some time now. In fact, since the beginning of our fiscal year, well before anybody knew an ECQ was coming, our interviews have already gone digital. So we actually do interviews via WebEx. So in this ECQ, despite the physical distance being a challenge, digital has brought us closer to our candidates. So that has been a big help for us, right?
Yeah, but some HR practitioners are I don't know. I guess want the physical presence pa rin kasi they can see the hand gestures and then yung pakiramdaman ba. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do believe it takes getting used to. I'll admit, right? I personally prefer still, of course, the physical interaction when it comes to interviewing, keeping out the person. But I also say that it's quite possible to interview and get a sense of the individual, even virtually. In fact, while we've started more on a real-time basis doing this video interviews this last year, it doesn't mean that we haven't been doing this for years already, right? So in fact, let me give an example. In many of the countries that we operate in Asia, we also look for recruits outside of the home country. So for example, when I was in China prior to this, we would recruit for Chinese people who were based in the US. Obviously, I could not fly my entire interview force to the US. So we would actually interview them virtually. I've done many myself, right? So it's not easy. I'll be the first to admit that. But at the same time, we have a proven track record of hiring good people that way.
Okay, so let me go back to the office setting kasi kanina pinag-usapan natin yung factory setting.
Correct.
And now, in the office setting, what's your strategy in deciding who gets to stay at home more as compared to those that need to be in the office more?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in fact, many people ask that question, right? Let me tell you this, right? The first thing is P&G in an office setting, right? Right now we're from home. We're actually not rushing to be the first to get back into office as a company, right? So the MECQ is scheduled to end on May 31st. I'm actually not looking to coming back to our office on June 1st, right? As a total company, we want to use some time to learn and understand more, right? What's happening in of course in the external environment, right? How is COVID progressing or hopefully flattening? We want to understand this. We want to continue learning best practices both locally as well as globally. We're very well connected globally with our counterparts in other countries. So we're going to spend some time learning. But one thing I can tell you for sure, when it's time for us to come back, right? Whether that be a week, a month, a few months from ECQ, we'll do a few things. First is we're looking at a gradual return to work. We're not looking at everyone coming back to office on the same time. That's the first. The second is we will ensure that we meet a 1 to 2 meter social distancing. And our facilities team has actually done the math already on what is the maximum capacity that we can retain in our office. Right? That will vary by floor because the number of heads that we have by floor is a little bit different. Right? But we are looking at a maximum capacity. Third is as we do so, we're exploring different approaches, whether it be shifts of employees or teams. Right? We want to make sure that we're not getting everyone in at the same time. Right? And as we do so, we also do want to ensure that you're generally in touch with the same people each time. Right? You don't want to mix too much. Right? Because that's your best way. If something happens, you're containing as well. So if you were to think about a few things, right? It's about taking some time, right? Not rushing into it. It's about being gradual and phased and risk-based. And it's about being able to cluster the teams that naturally work together as the ones that stay together, right? So these are a few of the principles that we're following as we think about our strategies of coming back to work.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier that your team did the math already kung ilan lang yung tao sa office per floor. Now, I'm assuming ano ba? Hindi naman lahat makakapunta doon. Ano kayang what's the cost to this? Will you expand offices? Rent more offices outside or work from home arrangements? I know you can only tell so much, no? But please tell us what you can disclose.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the good part is that our work from home works really well, right? So for example, if we were forced that we could only let a certain percentage of people work in the office physically, right? We also have the ability for the balance to be working from home very, very effectively. Just a fun fact is, right before this the ECQ started, we had our IT and facilities teams already evaluating our network capabilities, our VPN capabilities, right? And it's proven that we can actually do it, right? So we don't need to purchase or rent more office space because right now the virtual office space is almost unlimited.
Okay, so now some countries that eased restrictions saw a spike in infections. So what are your plans on that? What happens if an employee gets infected, particularly in the factory setting? So what's your strategy on that?
Okay, so in a factory setting, well, first and foremost, what we're prepared for is we actually have, as I mentioned earlier, quite strict medical protocols already now in our plan, right? So even from the onset of, let's say, a symptom, a cough, a slight fever, a cold, right? Anything that's influenza-like, employees are already instructed that they should not be coming to work, right? And they should be reported to our medical team, right? Typically, those symptoms would be well ahead of it being identified as COVID, right? We know today's protocol is they go to the hospital, if they have a symptom, they're tested, and then probably 5-6 days later, they receive the confirmation whether it's positive or negative, right? So in the context of PNG, from the onset of even just a symptom, the person's already instructed to work home, and the person's already instructed to go to the hospital. Now, in conjunction with this one, our medical teams also have very strict protocol that once they've heard that trigger, they also do contact tracing, right? So they do contact tracing, identifying all of the people who've been in close contact with that person. And then they, case by case evaluate, should those people also go on work from home as well, right? To just observe and see if anything happens, right? So this is step one. This is only step one, right? Now, even before it becomes COVID, right? Because you asked the question, what happens if there's COVID, right? What I'm proud to say is that even at the symptom stage, we already kind of do our part in ensuring that we disinfect the entire area that the person has actually been in touch with, right? So we kind of temporarily stop operation in whatever area that would have been, and then we do a deep cleaning, a deep disinfection. This is over and on top of our, kind of 3 times a day disinfection and every 2 hours disinfection of common areas. So we do that on top, right? So we have that for any case, even if it's a common cold, we'll still do that, right? So that then we can resume operations. So to answer your question, right, we have all of these processes in place, right? So that hopefully, if we do things well, we are able to keep everyone safe, right? And shutting down section only to ensure that this disinfection is done appropriately.
So P&G is a multinational company, and I assume, and definitely you're learning from each other. So what are the most important things that you've learned so far from the experiences of other from other P&G offices abroad?
Good question. So for me, I think there are 3, right? 3 learnings or 3 things that we will certainly keep doing, right? The first thing is that our employee safety will always have to be number 1 for us, right? Safety and welfare, right? Again, as I mentioned before, our employees are the company. And if you take care of the employees, they also take care of the company, right? So safety and welfare will have to be number 1 for us all the time, right? Whether it be how we operate in a plant or how we operate in our main office in BTC. The second learning throughout this process is, while P&G is a force for good, right? As a force for good, you have to take care of the employees, but at the same time, this being a force for good for the country is about being able to serve the consumers in the Philippines, because our products are essential, especially during this time, right? Products like Safeguard, as an example, would be important for consumers at this time. So as in this whole approach, right, a big learning for us was how to learn how to operate effectively despite the challenges in front of us, right? This is very challenging. I sympathize with the entire world on this. I sympathize with every company, right? Every company is trying their best, right? So through this process, one of our biggest learnings was, how do we operate efficiently? How do we operate effectively? How do we ensure that employees continue to be engaged? I recognize and sympathize that every person, every human being now is a little bit scared every day. So how do we ensure that they're engaged, right? And that's what we've been learning. It's not perfect, but we will continue to make it work. And the third learning for us is, I talked about we talked about this new normal, right? That where everyone's preparing themselves for a different world on Monday, right? Essentially on Monday, right? Or for some people by June 1st, right? Everyone's preparing for that. And everyone's preparing that this new world will be a little bit more difficult. I recognize that. And so in this context, our learning has been, how do you make this new normal a better normal? For us, at least, for our employees, right? How do we help people move ahead, right? Still be able to work and contribute well, but at the same time, feel comfortable doing so. I mentioned earlier on that we had an Alaga program, right? That has been designed for the ECQ. But we're also prepared that post ECQ, this Alaga program will continue. It'll evolve, right? How do you care for people in this new setup, right? How do you continue to ensure that people work effectively? How do you continue to ensure that you're developing them, training them, despite not having classroom sessions? How do you ensure that employees continue to feel engaged with their leaders, in touch with people, despite being work from home or partially work from home, right? How do you ensure that people are able to live healthy work and life balance, all right? For some people who continue to work from home, how do you make them feel that I'm not just stuck here, that I'm still healthy physically, I'm still healthy emotionally, I'm still healthy mentally, right? So that would be the third learning, which is, how do you make a new normal a better normal for your employees, so that your employees can contribute to the best of their abilities and still feel very healthy. So those are our big learnings.
Okay, thanks so much for this wonderful interview. That was P&G HR country leader Vince Dizon, and I'm Ralph Rivas. Thanks for watching.